Buil from Orlando, Florida. Let's give Mary a warm welcome. Mary Lee has been in our area because she has relatives in the area, so this is my second time I get to see Mary Lee, and thank you for coming. I would like to read the mission statement of the Toastmasters is to provide a mutually supportive and positive learning environment in which every member has the opportunity to develop communication and leadership skills, which in turn fosters self-growth and self-confidence and personal growth. It is my privilege to welcome Jerome Manigan, who is an advanced Toastmaster Bronze and competent leader, as our Toastmaster for today. Jerome gave us a delightful monodrama at our last meeting, and he's known for his marvelous voice. Let us welcome Jerome Manigan.
Thank you, Madam Toastmaster, and good day to all of my fellow Toastmasters. We have a full agenda, and if I can very briefly run through the agenda for you, we're going to have word power from Dick Reed. We're going to have humor from Verna Gibson. Nellye Bowen will give us table topics, and we have Joe Buil, who will give us a speech from the Advanced Toastmasters Manual on Poetry. Joe is chuckling over there. I said Joe Buil. He's still chuckling. Buil. Joe Buil. At any rate, we have a full meeting, and I'm sure that it will be an excellent meeting. This is an advanced Toastmasters group, and everyone here is dedicated and committed to the mission of Toastmasters, and that is to develop excellent leadership skills and outstanding speaking skills. We're going to start today's program with Dick Reed, who will function as our word power person. Dick Reed joined Toastmasters in 1986, but he had to stop for a moment or two, and that sometimes happens. Life brings about temporary stops, and in the end it brings about a permanent stop. He rejoined about a year ago, and today Joe has some words for us. Dick Reed, I'm sorry. Dick, before you begin, and I'm going to ask this of everyone who comes up to the microphone today, we are fast approaching the end of summer. I'd like to know one thing from you that you consider to be the very best thing about the end of summer.
Well, I think the best thing about the end of summer for me is the end of the heat. I am not all that fond of very hot weather. I much prefer September, October, November, when it's a little bit cooler. Now, when it gets into January, February, when it gets really cold, I could leave that alone too. But that's the best thing I like about summer. And I don't have to cut the grass anymore. My wife and I had the opportunity to go to a bookstore last night, and fortunately or unfortunately, depends on how you look at bookstores, we ended up buying several books. One of those books was this one. It's entitled An Exaltation of Larks, and I'm going to take some phrases from this book this evening. We use many words to indicate groups of animals and people. These words often have other meanings too. Some common examples are a pride of lions, a school of fish, and a brood of hens. Well, in this book there's about 1,000 other phrases, and I'm going to introduce 3 of these. These were in use, common use, a few centuries ago, but are no longer used. The first of these, one I like, an exaltation of larks. which is the title of the book by James Gibson. An exaltation of larks is simply a large flock of larks. And one can visualize a big flock of flying birds that are just exalting themselves. So I suppose that's where that came from. Another phrase that was in common use a while ago is an ostentation of peacocks. Now we all know what a peacock looks like, and I think that kind of instead of referring to these as a group of peacocks, we now refer to an ostentatious person as being rather show-offy, I suppose one could say. The third phrase I'm going to share is a parliament of owls. One could picture a group of owls sitting on a fence or somewhere, looking all wise, and I suppose that's how we would like our parliaments to act, although they don't always do so, do they? Well, at any rate, all of these phrases and more can be found in the book of An Exaltation of Larks by James Lipton. Mr. Postmaster.
Thank you very much. We are now at the humor spot on today's agenda. Our humorist is Verna Gibson, competent leader. Verna joined Toastmasters after retiring from a 20-year teaching career. She is CTM, competent Toastmaster, and a competent leader, and is currently working toward the ATM, or the Advanced Toastmaster. Let's welcome Verna Gibson, our humorist. And Verna, just as I said before Dick came up, I'm going to ask you the same question. What do you find to be the very best thing about the end of summer?
Well, actually, I'm not quite as anxious for summer to end this year as I usually am. Now, one good thing about it is that I am in the process of buying a condo, and that doesn't happen until October, so that will be after the end of summer. But I have something else to do before summer's over. I want to take scuba diving lessons, and I can still do that in September. So I'm still hoping for a little bit more summer to get me summer through September so that I can complete that.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you for having me here today. 3 women died and went to heaven. Well, when they entered the pearly gates, they were met by St. Peter. And St. Peter said that you 3 are welcome to come in. You've lived good lives, and we're welcoming you into heaven. However, I do have to warn you about something. There are a lot of ducks around here, and you are not to step on a duck. If you step on a duck, something terrible will happen. And I'm not going to tell you what, but believe me, it will be bad if you step on a duck. Well, they think, okay, that's no big deal. I mean, how hard is it to avoid a duck? So they went on in. Well, lo and behold, there's not just a dozen ducks or 20 ducks. There are thousands and hundreds of thousands of ducks all over the place. So they walk very carefully, you know, and they spend quite several days walking very carefully among these ducks. And finally, one of the women, sure enough, she steps on a duck. Well, here comes St. Peter, and he has with him this big, ugly man. I mean, this guy is big, mean, and ugly. And he handcuffs him to this woman and drags him off. And the other 2 women are there, and oh my gosh, I wonder what's going to happen to what, you know, gee, this is really scary, so we had better be very careful. So they walk carefully, spend a couple of weeks maybe. Finally, the second woman steps on a duck. Well, you know what happens. Again, here comes St. Peter, and he has an even bigger, uglier, meaner man with him than the first one. handcuffs him to this woman, and they go away. Well, the third woman is really scared. I mean, she is going to be so careful, and she is determined she's not going to step on a duck. She doesn't know what's happened to her friends, but she doesn't want to join them. So she walks very carefully. She shuffles her feet. I mean, she tries to walk without even lifting up her feet. She shuffles among these ducks, and she does pretty well for several weeks, maybe a month. Finally, she steps on a duck. Well, sure enough, here comes St. Peter. But this time, he has with him a very handsome man. This guy is a real good-looking dude, and he brings him up to her. He's young, handsome, muscular, brings him up to this woman and handcuffs the two of them together, and as they're walking away, the woman says, "Wow, what did I do to deserve you?" And he says, "I don't know what you did, lady, but I stepped on a duck." Thank you.
Thank you so very much. Thank you. We are now ready for...
Thank you very much. And now for our next speaker, Stanley Glitchner.
Speaking in public doesn't have to be a death sentence. At Toastmasters, we can help you overcome your fears.
We're now at the table topics portion of today's meeting, and our table topics master is Nellye Bowen, a woman who wears many hats. She is an environmentalist. She is a political activist. She is an advocate for the working man, and she's also a protector of animals. I understand Nellye has 4 cats. Join with me in welcoming Nellye Bowen. Nellye, you already know how this works, and I'm asking everybody the same question. What is the one best thing for you about the end of summer?
For me, it's twofold. The best thing, the weather's cooler, you're going to have the beautiful fall colors, which is gorgeous, the beautiful, beautiful blue skies with hardly a cloud, and animals, your insects and everything, they seem to know that summer's over, and their music and their concerts in the evening are beautiful. And to me, it is a concert.
Thank you.
On table topics, we try to teach people to think fast on their feet. You ask a question, and then by the time you get to the lectern, you formulate your answer. Today, it's about vacations, but vacation mishaps. You are visiting a dude ranch to just lie back and enjoy the scenery. But you have to ride horseback everywhere. You've never done that. Now what do you do? Verna, you're looking right at me.
Actually, I have done a little bit of horseback riding, but it's been a while. But this is interesting that this would be a question about the dude ranch, because for the last couple years, each year I have tried to take one of my grandchildren on a vacation just with Grandma and the lucky grandchild. So next year happens to be Kelly's turn. Kelly is 8 years old, and next year is her turn to go on a vacation with Grandma. And she wants to go to a dude ranch. So I need to begin looking for some dude ranches that aren't too far away. In fact, I think there's some in Kentucky. But I'm looking forward to that. But I'm going to have a little practice on horseback riding before I get to this dude ranch, because in November I am going to Costa Rica with a tour group. And we are going to be doing some really fun things. We're going to be taking a treetop canopy tour. We're going to be doing some kayaking. and also some horseback riding. So that's going to give Grandma a little bit of practice before Kelly and I go off to this dude ranch. So that was a good question, Nellye. Thank you.
Thank you, Grandma. Our second table topic is beautiful, sunny Florida. Yeah, of course it is, when it doesn't rain. Does it ever stop? You saved all year for this, too. Now what? Carol, you love Florida?
Thank you, Nellye. Let's see, I'll talk to our parliament of owls here. Yes, you save all year to go to Florida and it rains. Well, I have discovered that attitude is the whole thing that governs your life. And 10 years ago, I saved to go to Florida and get my tan for the year in early April, and I'd be ahead of everyone else getting my tan. It rained the whole time. I was in a foul mood. I didn't like the food at the health resort. I didn't like the people, and I was mad, at God, because didn't he know I was there to get a tan, and why did he have all this rain? So then, to make matters worse, when I get back to Cincinnati, it snowed in Cincinnati in April. It's not supposed to snow in Cincinnati in April. However, attitude change. Last year when I went and it rained every day, I'm going, didn't make a bit of difference because I get my tan at the suntan booth. So it didn't make any difference. I was able to enjoy the people. The food was the best that we'd had. And it's all a matter of attitude. And one of the ladies, when it rained one of the days, she wanted to do laps in the pool. And rather than not do laps because it was raining, there was no lightning, just gentle rain, she decided she would go underneath and swim under the water. And she discovered a new experience with the rain on the top of the water. It was a very neat experience. So attitude governs everything you do, whether or not you're having a good time. It's up to you. Madam Tabletopics Master.
Thank you, Carol. The honeymoon. Now, honeymoon is not exactly a vacation, but I just had to include this. The wedding was perfect. The bride was beautiful, a dream in her wedding gown. And the groom, Prince Charming, come to life. Just what we dream of. And the cake was so gorgeous you could hardly bear to cut it. Now this. A flat tire on the road leading to your secluded honeymoon hotel. Your cell phone is out. Now what? Who should I get for this one? Ray Boston?
Thank you, Tabletopics Master. Well, this sounds like a complete fantasy. As an avowed bachelor, a little hard for me to relate to the honeymoon, at least certain parts of it. I think I could relate to being the Prince Charming. So that sort of rings a bell. Actually, my fantasy honeymoon, the flat tire would probably work out. I probably would have eaten all that wonderful cake by now. You see, that certainly sounds like it would be fairly amusing. Of course, I just had a flat tire just the other day, and thank goodness for AAA. But if that happened to me, I would simply probably look at my GPS positioning watch, find out where the nearest tennis courts are. Because instead of worrying about a honeymoon cabin, I would try to find my local tennis court. I'd drag my wife there if she wanted to come along, and I'm sure she would, because as a fantasy, I would only marry a good tennis-playing wife. And, of course, we would play tennis. And I hope I'm not speaking too long as a Tabletopics person, because I'm going to go to an exaltation of tennis patrons in a few minutes and go up and see if Andy Roddick can come to Mason and win the local tournament. And then maybe I'll even follow him up to New York, where he is favored as the #1 player to win the U.S. Open. So that's what I do on my fantasy honeymoon. Thank you.
Well, Ray, I'm single too.
Hey, let's go. Do you play tennis?
I can learn. I've still got a racket. A hike up a mountain. The scenery is beautiful. Snow-capped mountains, green trees, wildflowers. What more could you ask for? Then you misstep and twist your ankle. The pain is intense and it will soon be dark. What can you do? Oh, Dick Reed. Do you like to hike?
Thank you, Nellye. That was quite a problem for me. As a matter of fact, that has happened to me. And what I have done is just limp a lot. Of course, one thing that can help that is if you can find a stout stick to help support your leg so that it's not quite so painful as you work your way back to civilization and can get it taped and bandaged properly and give it the rest that it needs to recover.
Thank you, Dad. Mary Lee, would you like to join us on Tabletopics? An ocean cruise. The vacation posters were never like this. You're spending your whole vacation hanging over the rail with seasickness. Will the rest of the cruise be like this? Mary?
Hanging over the rail? Lord, I never thought the vacation would end like this. It's going to get better. Listen to that music there in the bar. I think I'll just go in and get a little peppermint schnapps. I hear that settles the stomach. It works. It works! Okay, on with the vacation. You know, I was hoping all these age spots would just run together and I'd have a gorgeous tan. You know, when you're young, you don't even know about melanoma. And then you get a few wrinkles and they come up and knock on your door and say, I'm sorry, you're starting to look like a senior citizen. Would you move to Florida? And that's what I did. Now, when you move to Florida, there's just lots of cruises going out. You know that? You can get a good price. And if you have peppermint schnapps, don't get those little patches for motion sickness. Peppermint schnapps. Yep. They're using me for their commercials in Modern Maturity now. And they say, honey, you just keep taking those cruises. Those age spots are going to go together. Yeah, so you're going to have a gorgeous tan. Green tongue, but a gorgeous tan.
Now that was a fantastic performance. On two of the questions, I had the answers hidden, and nobody picked up on them. On Ray, on yours, when your cell phone was out, didn't say your bride's cell phone was out. And on the hiking, the answer I had hit in there, I thought you might pick up on, you never hike alone. So your buddy helps you out. He goes, gets the SUV or whatever you drove, brings it up, loads you in, and there you go to the emergency room. Yeah. And Mr. Toastmaster?
Thank you, Nellye.
I'd like to begin tonight with a little joke. This guy, he's a farmer. He says, hey, hello? Sorry. But seriously, folks.
Speaking in public is no joke.
Farmer says, doctor says, chicken says...
For help, call Toastmasters, the public speaking support group.
The chicken.
Poetry can be one of the most challenging forms of literature to interpret. Poetry is highly imaginative and highly charged with emotion, much more so than prose. A poet doesn't give a complete and detailed description of a scene or incident as the writer of prose does. Poets feel that a lot of words weaken a poem. Instead, the poet takes some detail and by suggestion causes us to fill in the other details with our imagination. The poet uses images to pack as much as possible into a few words. Sometimes, too, the poet ignores logic and factual truth and uses symbolism instead of realism. All of this can make interpretation more difficult. Our speaker, Joe Buil, was born in Puerto Rico, where he attended private and public schools until his graduation as a civil engineer from the A&M College of the University of Puerto Rico in 1957. He is a retired professional engineer, having spent his first 10 years with the Corps of Engineers and his last 23 years with the River Forecast Center of the NWS. He retired in 1990. In 1972, he was chosen for a year sabbatical, and he completed the Master of Science degree at the University of Cincinnati. In 1980, he received the highest award his agency confers on its employees, the Outstanding Performance Award. Joe has been a Toastmaster for several years. He and his wife are residents of Anderson Township, and they are the proud parents of 3 children, 2 grandchildren, 1 great-grandchild, and it is my good pleasure to bring to you Mr. Joe Buil. Joe. Before you start, though, I think that I'm going to ask your evaluator to read the objectives of your speech.
Before I start, I'd like to remove some of the
Okay, that'll be fine. Joe, please.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster.
We probably need that up there for him.
That's right.
This speech, Interpreting Poetry, is the second project in the Interpretive Reading Manual. The objectives are to understand the difference between poetry and prose, to recognize how poets use imagery, rhythm, meter, cadence, and rhyme to convey the meaning and emotions of their poetry, to apply vocal techniques that will aid in the effectiveness of the reading. And the time is 6 to 8 minutes. Toastmaster.
Thank you. Joe?
Today, I'd like to present to you, as part of this program on interpreting poetry that's sponsored by Toastmasters, I'd like to add a couple of things that they're not in the book in there that are important. In the question of poetry, the poet really is pouring his heart out. It's more of a soul communication type of thing. It's not just imagery, it's an imagery based on intimacy in a way. In poetry, the individual that is listening and the individual that is reading the poetry are walking along, strolling along side by side, and visualizing these descriptive images that the poet is trying to describe. It's more of an intimate type of thing. So I'm going to ask you today, if it's possible, before I start this poem, to close your eyes, because you're going to imagine. You're not going to be looking at me. It doesn't matter too much. Just think about the descriptive imagery in this poem. This poem is called Eternal, and it goes like that, like this. Down the slopes the river flow with storm-entwined responses, unique, fixed forever not, crystal heralding their sources. So man is born as a trickle which starts from a cloudy droplet, responding to winds of love, regardless of where they form it. His life is ever so fickle. His path appears lined with roses, but below the petals, thorns remind him of many gray pauses. Tumbling, turning, splashing, rushing, our up and down white water will meet in his final stroll with awaiting arms Lord Ocean. Let white foam announce the dawn of a new life metamorphosis. The Lord Ocean sends man's vapors on a new eternal rhapsody. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
All the education in the world won't help you get ahead in life if you can't express your ideas effectively. Every day, competition for advancement gets tougher and tougher. You need an edge. A Toastmasters club can give you that edge. A low-cost learning experience for men and women. Toastmasters gives you the confidence to express your ideas to anyone. Get the Toastmasters edge.
We are now at that portion of the Toastmasters meeting where we will have evaluations, and I am putting an S on evaluation because we will have both an individual and collective evaluation of Joe's presentation this morning. Let me introduce to you the general evaluator for today's meeting, Tom Hoddle. He is an advanced Toastmaster Bronze, and he is a member of 3 Toastmasters clubs. Tom? And before we go into the evaluation, let me ask you one thing, best thing about the end of summer for you.
Best thing about the end of summer. Best thing about the end of summer is it goes right into September, which is my favorite month of the year.
Very good.
It's just everything that has been building over summer has cooked to perfection. The weather is perfect. The trees are green. It's the most beautiful month of the year. I love September. And now I'm going to start Joe's evaluation by calling up another Joe, the Orange Man himself, Mr. Joe Schwerling. Could you come up, Joe?
First of all, as a prelude, I'll answer the question that's been asked of all the others by Jerome. Yeah, what the end of summer means to me is that this coming week is the Toastmasters International's annual convention, at which Toastmasters from around the world get together, have the finals for the World Championship of Public Speaking, a lot of professional workshops, and to extend the various groupings that Richard Reed presented earlier, I would propose a reunion of Toastmasters. It recently occurred to me that a reunion is what every meeting is. We get together and we talk about ourselves and what's happened in the past and what we're hoping to do in the future. So I think a reunion of Toastmasters is what we should call our future gatherings. And similarly, at the end of the annual Toastmasters conference, we're heading right into the fall series of district conferences, which are the next best things for vacationing everywhere. For the evaluation, Joe Buil's presentation of interpreting poetry. Again, the instruction was for the speaker's task was to present a poem using vocal techniques to capture the imagery and rhythm of a poem and to convey its meaning and emotions to the audience. Inasmuch as I'm not that well versed in poetry, I might say, I'll cover the evaluation points as illustrated in the project manual. Was the speaker able to express the thoughts and emotions of the poem? I do think it was a very thoughtful poem. And additionally, as presented, the vocalization and the phrasing and the rhythm of as it was presented and the impact points were all expressed very well. Obviously, in order to do that, the speaker needed to understand the poem quite well. Was the speaker able to envision the pictures painted by the poet? I think we were all pretty well aided in visualizing the meaning of the poem, particularly by asking that we concentrate on, by keeping our eyes closed and not, so we're not distracted by looking at the speaker. And again, it was a very, I think, an appropriate poem for this project. And actually, my only suggestion on that might be that since the project was meant to be 6 to 8 minutes, it seemed like it would have been envisioning a much longer poetic presentation. Did the speaker make effective use of pauses, rhythm, and cadence, which is what I just discussed? I think you did very well, Joe. There was no sing-song rhythm. This was a very serious composition. Frankly, I did not, because I was concentrating on the poem, I didn't notice how your eye contact was, so maybe that'll be brought out in the general evaluation portion. And with that, I'll return control to our general evaluator. And thank you, Joe.
And now we're going to do a group evaluation. This is where the group at large will comment on Joe's presentation and strengths and weaknesses and areas for improvement. And I will start with our esteemed Toastmaster.
All right, thank you very much, Tom. Joe, this is an excellent poem, and I'm very impressed to see that you not only delivered the poem, but you are the author of the poem. It's very good. I have only one suggestion. I think that when you get to the 4th verse, there's an opportunity for you to really do some very interesting voice work. You have these words, tumbling, turning, splashing, rushing. I would have enjoyed seeing or hearing you bring to life or animate those words with your voice and possibly with some body motion. But it's an excellent poem, and I enjoyed hearing you present it to us, and thank you very much.
Would anybody else like to comment? Right. Do you want to come up, or do you want to?
Can't be heard from back there.
Okay. Sure. Hey, boss.
Just a quick comment. I enjoyed the poem immensely. I was a little bit unable to see that you had written it because your last name was hidden there in part of the graphics, so I'm even more impressed with the written and then the spoken delivery. The only thing that threw me about the presentation was I did not expect to see you get up and tell us about the imagery and how we should be imagining it. Although I think that was very good and put us all in the mood by closing our eyes. But after your introduction and everything, I was already focusing and just prepared for you to get up and make the presentation. That would be excellent information for a workshop, perhaps even afterwards, so we could get ready for future presentations. But I think that it distracted just a little bit to hear the suggestions, so I would have preferred for you to get up directly, get us focused, present the presentation, but I immensely enjoyed it, so thank you.
And would anybody else like to comment? Verna.
One of the things that I've known about Joe almost right from the first day that I met him was how much he loves poetry. And as I told Joe on my comment sheet card, that poetry was very difficult for me when I was in college, and I had to interpret poems. I never could seem to come up with the same thing as what the professor thought the author was saying. But anyway, I enjoy hearing you read poems, Joe. You say that it's obvious how much you enjoy poetry. But I also remember a really neat little poem that you wrote for me, maybe on our second or third meeting of Toastmasters, A Little Old Lady and a Little Old Man. Remember that? I thought that was so special, and I still have that. And I've enjoyed your poems ever since then.
Thank you.
And who else would like to comment? Anyone? Anyone?
Really.
You know, it's so interesting to go to a new Toastmasters club. It's like going to a family reunion. They don't know any of you. And then you start to talk, and I know a whole lot about you then. You know, I would have liked you to have told me and the others what brought you to the point of writing this. I write poetry. And many times it's something that's happening in your life or somebody else's life, and you sit down with that legal pad and you listen to the water and your mind starts floating and poetry comes. I would have liked your words to have been just a little longer. You were only 3 minutes, 3+. I would have liked to have known some of the background on you and what was happening at that time that brought you to this point of these words. Thank you for sharing.
And would anybody else like to comment? Okay, I'll add a few of my own comments. Joe, it's always great to hear you do poetry. You're such a natural at it. Joe is a member of the World Champion Toastmasters, another advanced club, and he's a very popular choice to do the prayer toast at the beginning, which is what a lot of clubs begin their meetings with. Just two comments. One is, and it shows you how subjective evaluations can be, I did like the way you tried to focus us at the beginning, because you have this short poem to present, and this particular project doesn't really yield well to its time frame, which is 6 to 8 minutes. Now, a month ago, Jerome found a long narrative poem that would have fit. But for what you were doing, I think it worked because it brought us into focus. But to add to what Mary Lee said, I think since you're talking about 3 minutes, maybe a little bit of a discussion about how you came to write the poem, just to fit the time frame and to give us a little more insight into you and maybe add something to the poem itself. And overall, I love listening to you read poetry and give poetry. You have a terrific voice for that. You have a terrific delivery for that. You seem to be most at home when you're reading poetry. Thank you.
What future do you envision for yourself? What dreams do you have? If you want your dreams to come true, you must have confidence in yourself and your abilities. A Toastmasters Club can help you build that confidence. A low-cost learning experience for men and women Toastmasters shows you how to express yourself clearly and effectively. Make your dreams a reality. Join a Toastmasters Club.
We've had an excellent meeting. I'm very grateful to everyone who participated in today's meeting for fulfilling obligations that you had indicated you would fulfill. Mary Lee from Florida, I really enjoyed you, and if you have classes in speech making, classes in acting, classes in, let me know. I will certainly sign up. You were excellent, and it was our great pleasure to have you here with us today. I suppose that those of us who are members of Toastmasters are like a parliament of owls, because we are wise in that we understand that it is through Toastmasters that we can develop leadership skills and public speaking skills. I would be remiss and most unfair if I ended today's meeting without responding to the question that I had put to each person who came to the podium, and that is, what is the best part about the end of summer? Well, I would agree that in a few weeks we're not going to have to worry about lawns, and we're not going to have to worry about insects and humid temperatures and all of those things. But for me, the best part of the end of summer is that we can now return to Toastmasters with our minds focused on the great learning that we can experience as a result of being a member of Toastmasters. And we can also say to those people who said, well, I cannot come to Toastmasters meeting during the summer because I've got to do this, I've got to do that, blah, 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 blah. Those excuses are no longer available to them. So it is great that at the end of summer, all of you who have not joined Toastmasters because you were busy with summer activities no longer have that excuse. And I am going to suggest that you be in touch with Carol Carmelick, the hardest working woman in Toastmasters anywhere. She will give you excellent advice, direction, assistance, and whatever you might need in order to become an active member of Toastmasters. Ms. Cormelick.
Thank you, Jerome, for your excellent Toastmastering today. And I always love your voice. I could listen to it all the time. I especially am thrilled to have you here, Mary Lee. Mary Lee came to another club meeting 2 years ago, and I really liked her, but I forgot how much I liked her until she was back here today. Would you like to come forward and have a few comments on your visit here?
Well, you know what you see in front of you, child, is a middle-aged woman who, due to no fault of her own, wasn't my fault, child. I'm a widow. I know you're saying, my God, she doesn't look like a widow, does she? True, I look middle-aged, but I don't look like a widow. Well, I'll tell you, there's 3 reasons why I do look like a widow. I'm really too short to look like a widow. I'm entirely too young to look like a widow. And, oh well. You know, before my husband died, he said, Mary Lee, you know, as soon as a woman becomes a widow, she loses about 20 pounds. He lied. He's been gone 5 years, haven't lost an ounce. But in truth, life is always a matter of starting over again. And 5 years ago, I started over again. I went to Orlando and I bought some land, and I had a young architect draw me plans. And I went to the building commission and I took out a permit. Builder, owner, contractor. You can do it. You can do it. Try it. I tried it and I built a beautiful house in 5 months. Oh, if I'd had a contractor, would never have happened that way. And you know what? I'm in 4th quarter of my life. And honey child, I'm praying for overtime.
Thank you, Mary Lee. The animation that Mary Lee has is what you find a lot of times at Toastmasters and sometimes in the club. That was a refreshing breath of fresh air here there. Sometimes we get a little staid and aren't as animated as we could be. So I'm glad that Mary Lee injected that today. I'd like to thank everyone for taking part today. I thought we had a good meeting. I enjoyed it. Our next meeting will be, actually won't be a meeting, it will be our charter party on Monday, September the 15th at the Good Shepherd Lutheran Church. And our meeting is adjourned. And now that